The story of Moses hearing the voice of God in the burning bush and directing him to lead his people may be familiar, but what really happened? Could a burning bush actually talk to you? Here's the burning bush from the Bible explained. Spiritual beings revealing themselves to humanity is present in some form or fashion in the myths, legends, and/or doctrines of religious faith in every culture within every country. It's called Theophany, the self-revelation of the divine to humankind. The events of the burning bush are first and foremost another example of the Hebrew God revealing himself to his people. According to the Encyclopedia Biblica, the story in the form which it assumes in Exodus appears to have resulted from a fusion of two widely current beliefs, that fire indicated the divine presence and that certain trees were the permanent abodes of deities. Translating Hebrew, even for the most well-versed, can be tricky, and it is often very easy to mistranslate, or at the very least not find an easy one-to-one correlation between Hebrew and English. In fact, what some translate as bush, others translate as Sinai, the mountain where Moses later received the Ten Commandments. According to Jewish Encyclopedia, the word rendered bush is found only in this passage of Exodus and in Deuteronomy 33:16, where, however, it is possible that the right reading is Sinai. If not Mount Sinai, it is not clear to this day where exactly the location of the burning bush is, but one potential place is St. Catherine's Monastery in what is now modern-day Egypt. Named after a martyred Egyptian saint, it is said that this monastery was built on the location of the burning bush and has a bush growing still within its premises. Moses was lowborn at a time when Pharaoh ordered all male Israelite babies to be killed, so his mother sent him down a river to save him, where he was discovered and raised by the daughter of the Pharaoh. Yet, being a part of the Pharaoh's family meant that he came into contact with his own people, who were the slaves of the Egyptians. So, according to Exodus, Moses struck down and killed an Egyptian slave master, and in turn had to flee the wrath of the Pharaoh. After Moses' encounter with God at the burning bush, his whole world was upended. As an escaped murderer, he was called to go back to the land of his crime and free his people from the Pharaoh, the man who allowed him to be raised in his courts.
Now therefore, behold, I will send you unto Pharaoh, that you may bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt.
The brilliance of this story is how it has Moses go back and do the same thing he tried to do when he murdered the Egyptian, enact justice, but now he has the power of God at his side instead of merely his own human will. It is this divine mandate that allows him to succeed. But the major religions differ on how they interpret the burning bush. Exodus is perhaps the most important book within the Torah because it shows the endurance and extremes of God's faithfulness to his people, literally freeing them from slavery so that they can be God's people. According to the Jewish Theological Seminary of America, Moses already senses that freedom from Egypt is not simply about personal liberation. Rather, the endeavor speaks to a larger national mission of serving God. The Jewish Encyclopedia goes even further with the imagery of the burning bush, explaining, "The burning but not consuming fire of the bush indicated to Moses that Israel would successfully endure all the sorrows and pains inflicted upon it by the Egyptians. The imagery of the fire that burns but does not disintegrate the bush is a symbol for the Jewish people that, much like their slavery in Egypt, whatever suffering they might endure, they will come forth from it by the hand of their God." In his commentary on Exodus, John Calvin, a Protestant reformer, wrote, "The bush is likened to the humble and despised people. Their tyrannical oppression is not unlike the fire which would have consumed them, had God not miraculously interposed. That, though the waves of trouble beat against the church and threaten her destruction, yet shall she not be moved, for God is in the midst of her." There is a common tie between the Protestant Christian rendering of this event and the Jewish one. God sees his people being oppressed and delivers them from their troubles. As long as they are God's people, they will not be consumed.
Say to him, the Lord God of Israel says, let my people go.
Where the Christian and Jewish interpretations diverge is in who is included within the people of God. Unlike the Jewish interpretations, the Christian view of the inhabitants of God's national mission involves both Jews and Gentiles, a term for non-Jewish persons or nations. The Orthodox and Catholic churches have various disagreements in doctrine and practices. However, they come to a similar interpretive framework for the burning bush that is very different from Jewish and Protestant interpretations. That's because they view the Old Testament story of the burning bush as a metaphor for the New Testament birth of Jesus. Both the Orthodox and Catholic churches have an unburnt bush icon that shows Mary within the symbolic flames of the bush. According to Aletheia, just as the bush was burning without being consumed, the Virgin gave birth to Christ while remaining a virgin. The St. Paul Center speaks to the various moments in the Old Testament where the divine theophany appears in fire descending onto humanity. Curtis Mitch goes on to explain, Now, if Mary's child is a divine child, and the divine presence is revealed in fire, then it seems beautifully fitting to see the burning bush as a figure of her divine maternity. There are various sects and offshoots of the mainstream Protestant Christian religion, and even these various sects have their own take on the burning bush, even though their starting point falls in line with the mainstream Christian church. According to the Christian Science Journal, the student of the scriptures can trace this fire of inspiration, this holy light of truth which illumines human consciousness in the experiences of patriarch, prophet, and disciple. What should be noticed here is the language used. Compared to other Jewish and Christian interpretations, Christian scientists use a framework that harkens back to the Enlightenment philosophy instead of divine mystery. Enlightenment thinkers embraced reason as a core tenet, notes Britannica, over faith and doctrine. The Mormons also shift their language around the burning bush. As Mormon scholar Ellis T. Rasmussen explains, a manifestation was given to Moses by a messenger of light, causing a bush to appear to burn. It was not really a fire and was not consumed. According to the Mormons, the bush only appears to be on fire, but was not in actual fact on fire, which is why it was not consumed. Instead, they focus on the illuminating glory of God, with the bush signaling a message from God rather than the miracle of a non-consuming physical fire. Islam, too, incorporates their own understanding of the burning bush incident, which varies from both Jewish and Christian interpretations. There are 3 separate mentions of the story of Moses in the Quran, but only one of them mentions the burning bush. According to Surah 28:30, and when Musa, or Moses, came to it, a voice was uttered from the right side of the valley in the blessed spot of the bush, saying, "O Musa, surely I am Allah, the Lord of the worlds." The Quranic version of the story strips it of the Jewish salvation tale and instead solidifies the revelation that Allah is the only true God. Yet according to Ezra Akin Kavank's study on mirror writing in Islamic calligraphy, Moses' metaphysical experience of the burning bush can be considered, viewing a muthana. One's enlightenment is circumscribed by one's level of preparedness and receptivity. In other words, the form a revelation takes is due to the reality of our want or need. Kavank notes that Musa needed fire for his family, so he saw the revelation of Allah as a bush on fire. The content of the revelation may be completely holy and other, but the form in which the revelation takes, according to Kavank, is relative to the desire of the witness. Bahá'í is one of the newer religions that started in the 19th century. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, it teaches, quote, the essential unity of all religions and the unity of humanity, and that the founders of the world's great religions have been manifestations of God and agents of a progressive divine plan for the education of the human race. One mention of the burning bush comes in a Bahá'í prayer. The brightness of the fire of your love will no doubt fuse and unify the contending peoples and kindreds of the earth, whilst the fierceness of the flame of enmity and hatred cannot but result in strife and ruin. In another text, there is an anarchistic tone to the proceedings of Moses back to Egypt. The palaces of the potentates shall be laid waste, and the imposing buildings of the emperors reduced to dust. It seems as if Bahá'í interpretation seeks to strike a balance between fire as illumination and fire as destruction, never quite siding with one or the other. The Rastafarian movement started in the 1930s among the working-class blacks of Jamaica, who saw the middle-class whites as those who stole their African identity away from them when they were brought to the Caribbean as slaves. Haile Selassie, who was the leader of Ethiopia for much of the 20th century, is considered their Moses and their God. The movement is by its very design an Afrocentric religion, and it uses ganja in some of its rituals. According to the New Times, ganja is used as a holy sacrament by Rastas in many ways. Rastas smoke herb to meditate, symbolizing the burning bush, and for its curative properties, i.e. asthma.
The more you accept herbs, the more you accept Rastafari.
In similar fashion, High Times asked the question as to whether Moses was stoned when he saw the burning bush, saying, in 1936, an etymologist working at the Institute of Anthropology in Warsaw, Sula Benet, noted that the Hebrew words canna and cannabosum, cane and fragrant cane, mistakenly translated as calamus in the Old Testament, were in fact a reference to our modern word cannabis. Science has, of course, sought to provide answers to the many events of the Bible, usually by providing scientific explanations for biblical phenomenon. Assuming the Bible is a literal historical record of events, scientists work to explain what the writers of the Bible might have been talking about when discussing things like the burning bush. One such explanation for the burning bush involves the scraping of tectonic plates against each other during an earthquake, creating an electrical spark that is conducted through the layers of rock, creating a glow or illumination right at the horizon of the sky. Another explanation revolves around the potential type of tree that Moses saw, the Dictamnus albus. According to McGill University, In the summer, the plant, also known as the gas plant, exudes a variety of volatile oils that can catch fire readily and may give the impression that the bush is burning. On the other hand, Benny Shannon, professor of cognitive psychology at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, posits that it's likely Moses was hallucinating due to the smoke from the burning bush. He bases this speculation on his own experiences in the Amazon with ayahuasca. While each of these interpretive frameworks has their nuances, it does seem that the thing that ties them all together revolves around the concepts of light and revelation. Often the two concepts are tied together. As the light shines down, more is revealed by its beam. Within the various monotheistic religions and their offshoots and sects, the burning bush has been some form of revelation to humanity, some self-disclosure of God. Even in scientific circles, light and revelation are still key, but instead represent properties of the mind of humanity to search out the truth of their own accord, to reveal more and more of a purely material world. Whatever you believe, the story of the burning bush provides a framework in which to explore the nature and means of revelation in our world today. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite biblical stories are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.